Welcome. It is 12 February, Wednesday, the year of our Lord 2020. We're live from the nation's capital. It's war room pandemic. This virus is a demon, and we cannot allow this demon to hide, so says President Xi, the last emperor of China, as he is now groping with, having his nation and his political party grope with this pandemic. Episode 15 of Pandemic. We've been doing this for a couple weeks, and when we first launched this show and talked to people about it, it was more controversial than war room impeachment. People said, why are you getting people all worked up? This is not a pandemic. It's a cold. It's a little cold coming out of China. That would be incorrect. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Broadcast Radio Network nationwide. We're on America's Voice, the platform, the streaming platform of the Trump revolution throughout this country. An honor to be on 96.7 FM in Chicago and 103.9 in the Chicago suburbs, the Windy City, the city of big shoulders, broad shoulders. Have Dr. Stephen Hatfield. Dr. Hatfield is known as being one of the senior researchers of the biodefense researcher at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, the pros from Dover, as we call them, up there in Frederick, Maryland, I think it is, and is on the adjunct professor at George Washington University. And also Jack Maxey, who runs the engine room of War Room Pandemic. Since we took him off the impeachment several weeks ago, fantastic job. Jack's now got a whole team doing this daily. And very honored to two very special guests today, because we're going to talk about some practical stuff in the United States of America, some shocking stuff. Rosemary Gibson joins us. She's the author of China RX, Exposing the Risk of America's Dependence on China for Our Medicine. And it's a fabulous book. It's a must-read. We're going to get up on the site later. It is going to make your head explode, what Rosemary in her very low-key way is going to tell you. Also, we got obviously Dr. Hatfield's 3 Seconds Until Midnight, which we're trying to make a bestseller throughout the country. This is the nonfiction version of Stephen King's The Stand. Also joining us in the second half of the show will be Mike Bowen. He's the EVP and owner of Prestige Ameritech, which is the leading manufacturer, I guess the only manufacturer in the United States, of what we'll talk about, of the N95 mask, correct? I guess it's kind of a respirator mask, or a respirator. Yeah. We'll talk about that.
The mask.
The mask that you're going to need, the mask you should be stocking up on. And no, we don't own any of the company. We haven't gone along that yet. But it's quite shocking what Rosemary Gibson and what Mike Bowen are going to have to tell us today. But I want to go first about shocking. What we're trying to do is let's focus on China and focus on Wuhan. I understand this thing's metastasizing and going out throughout the world, and we don't really have a feel for it. But Dr. Gabriel Leung went to London en route to the World Health Organization and discussed yesterday, gave an interview in The Guardian, right? One of the best newspapers in the world, best edited. I don't believe in their ideology, but an excellent newspaper. And he gave an interview and said that 60, correct me if I'm wrong, 60 to 80% of the world could actually get this virus in the next couple of years. Is that the way I read it? And Dr. Gabriel Leung, so people know, is the virus hunter from Hong Kong, was at the tip of the spear at SARS, really called this when the Chinese authorities were sitting there going, there's nothing to see here, nothing going on here. He was the first world expert to actually stand up and say something. So if you look at, there's a new study out of Harvard. There's more stuff from the Imperial College, Dr. Neil Ferguson, on and on and on. So I'm going to turn to Dr. Hatfield, who's been the kind of calming down, and let's take a look at this, and let's look at this model. We don't really know much. Let's talk about Dr. Gabriel Leung first. He's the virus hunter. What? And this is what I was asking last night. What is it that changed in scale that got Dr. Leung, who said early on that this is a concern, the game now to say 60 to 80% could be, and Rosemary, our house rules here is just jump in. This is not, this group's not shy about getting in front of a microphone. What happened that Dr. Leung, and then went to WHO, and you see the whole World Health guys had a big change of attitude after he talked to him. Dr. Hatfield.
Well, he's not saying that this will happen, 60 to 80% of the world infected. But previous pandemics, such as the 1918 influenza, affected a significant fraction of the people on this planet at the time. So he's suggesting, this needs to be kept in mind, worst case scenarios. And I agree. This thing doesn't seem to be dying down. There's some disturbing evidence that some parts of China may be relaxing their social distancing measures
For economic reasons?
for
Yes.
economic
To
reasons.
having to get the pressure to get the factories back up and running?
Yes.
What do you cite for that? What have you seen or read, or what disturbs you about, and what parts of the country basically you think that's happening?
It's one of the provinces where they're
And it's being
Yeah.
driven by the local guys who are being pressured by the business owners. I mean, there are reports out today. Al Jazeera was over there, and they're saying that the farms can't even get the produce into the cities right now. They did a study of small business owners in China, were surveyed by one of the universities there. The 85% said if this goes on for 3 months, they are bankrupt.
Right. No, they said that 1/3 is 30 days. They said, how much cash do you have on hand, the small business owner in this region? By the way, the region had a population of like France and Germany combined, so it's not like small.
Right.
They said 1/3 said, I've got cash on hand for 30 days. Another third said, I have cash on hand for 60 days. Another 20% doing, I got cash on hand for 90 days. Those are the kulaks, right? The wealthy ones. 90 days and they're all out of business.
Incredible.
Incredible. This is they're fast hit the wall.
This is the thing. When an infrastructure starts to collapse, food shortages can be a feature of that. In any country, even the United States. If we lose 30-40% of our workforce due to illness or war or natural disaster, we expect to see some food shortages. The strikes that have occurred in Britain in the past with the truck drivers and this type of thing, you can model this now.
We'll talk about modeling in a second. Let's go to social distancing. You've never seen in human history, and Rosemary, jump in here, but you've never seen in human history anything on this scale with the number of quarantines of 100 million people, and also then lockdowns of another couple of 100 million, from Shanghai to Beijing to all over. But you say you feel when you're reading these things now that maybe the social distancing is not working?
Well, I don't know how well people are following it. They're getting quite violent about keeping people isolated because this thing hasn't really, if everybody stayed home right now in China, this thing can be over in 14 days. They're not doing that. The photos I see, people are still out and about, this type of thing.
Why would it be over in 14 days?
Well,
Explain that to the audience.
If we're talking about a general incubation period, it could be as long as 21 days, 24 days. We're uncertain on that at the moment. But if everyone stayed home, that family would get infected, but no one else would. Well, these are pretty draconian measures they've initiated, so they're either not following it properly or something's wrong.
The business press is focused too much on the official number coming out of these official numbers. People should just discount them. They're not relevant. But the
Right.
business press looks at, the number of infected people is coming down because the CCP tells me that. But you see, the smart money is saying, hey, we got something very deep here. Before I turn to Rosemary, what this Harvard study,
Yeah.
they actually said potentially the pandemic, and I'm just quoting from the Harvard study, correct me if I'm wrong, they said potentially the pandemic could come here to the United States.
Without question. I mean, there is a potential, and everybody is basically waiting to see what will happen in the next 7 to 14 days, because all the people that have come back, even the Chinese students, Chinese nationals, Chinese American citizens back from that region, will know whether or not the ones who got through are infected, able to spread it.
Yeah, Dr. Hatfield, talk about testing in China and how many is China really capturing the
No.
number of people with it?
No.
How good is the testing? So what are we counting and what's being missed?
We're still in the Western world. We need a laboratory, like a cruise ship that's infected, that's isolated, to go in and let's start getting some hard data. When do you really start shedding virus? Where do you shed the virus? Where is the test more effective? We need an alternate to the RT-PCR. Normally this is monoclonal antibodies and what's called ELISA testing. That's still a little way off for those test kits. But
But
there's
Dr. Fauci, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Fauci told us on the stage at the White House that the test kit is 50-50?
That's what he said.
Well, I mean, he just happens to be the guy's CEO.
Right.
And do-
I'm just saying. Remember, I got a D in sophomore biology, so
And do we have enough test kits here in the United States?
Not at the moment.
No.
Look, we have this laboratory response network that's been set up for millions of dollars. It's a cooperative agreement throughout the United States of different state, federal, local hospital laboratories. They're all hooked in. So when a new disease appears or some bioterrorism agent, the PCR primers are sent out, and it's supposed to work really smoothly. It's taken 2 weeks to get these, to begin to ship these primers to the system. There is another way that may be possible. When your airway is infected, it gives off chemical SOS, distress signal. The nitric oxide, isoprenes, a variety of volatile chemicals that evaporate very easily into the air. And it sends out a distress signal to all the other cells around it in the airway. We can measure these. And there's an experimental, well, it's been well tested, but it's not been FDA certified, of something about the size of an alcohol breathalyzer.
let's talk about this equipment for a second. I want to get to Rosemary, and then because we've got Mike Bowen coming on at the bottom of the hour, Rosemary's going to be here for the whole show. One, how did you get the idea for this book? I mean, I would never think in a million years of that the United States, as much as I know about China, right, and I pride myself in knowing China pretty well and being one of the super hawks about the CCP, I would never think that most of our medicine, not about the virus, almost all of it is either manufactured in China or the component pieces of that are manufactured in China, so that we really don't have any medicines ourselves. How did you come up with this idea? How did the concept even come to you? And then tell us about your research.
Well, Steve, I just stumbled on this. I wanted to write another book that was in the interest of our country, and literally fell on this and would uncover things. And I said, nobody knows about how dependent we are on the basic components to make our medicines. And this is mostly about generics that are 90% of our medicines. And so we had to find a cheaper way to make them. And so it was outsourced to China. And they have a global chokehold. This is global. So we're talking every other country. There's a global chokehold on the chemicals,
The precursors.
the precursors, to make the key ingredients in our medicines.
Tell our audience, what do you mean on the generics? What do you mean by that? Like what type of medicines and how many Americans does this affect that it really is controlled by China? So that, forget the national security aspect of it, but if you have a pandemic that's over there and people are not showing up to the factories and to the jobs, eventually
Right.
it's going to hit here. What scale are we talking about as far as medicines go?
Well, under normal circumstances, without coronavirus, if for some reason we didn't get exports of medicine from China, within a couple months, our pharmacy shelves would be empty in the United States. And the same is
in
true
a couple of months.
In a couple of months.
Of every basic medicine that's out
Of
there.
basic medicines. We can even take the medicines to treat people. Say people come in who have coronavirus and they go into the hospital. So what are they going to get? They might be on a ventilator. And so patients on a ventilator will get sedatives. They'll get fentanyl or propofol. Where the ingredients come for that? They come from China. If your blood pressure is really low, you might get epinephrine or dopamine. Where does that come from? The core chemicals come from China. And if you get a secondary infection, it's bacterial. Or if you go into sepsis, which is, a lot of people die of it, where the antibiotics come from.
Particularly in hospitals today, right?
Exactly. So where these come from? We can't even make penicillin anymore and some of the last resort antibiotics. And that's under normal circumstances, let alone with the coronavirus.
Okay, so walk people through, how did this shift over and when did it shift over? Most people would sit there and think, hey, it's the United States of America. We've got all these pharmaceutical companies. We're the top, we're the railhead of all this. We have to be the safest, we have to have it all. You're saying no, 90% of the generics are all either in China or related to component parts in China. Well, how did this happen? Walk through, how did it happen? When did it happen?
It began in the early 90s when generic drugs really came out strong. President Reagan was bipartisan in the 80s. Let's have the Generic Drug Act. And that made medicines a lot cheaper for people. The brand name products would go off patent. So let's make generics. And so over time, how do we make these cheaper? And so we started sourcing the ingredients to make them in China. And even India is dependent on China, which is a whole other issue. And then once we opened up free trade, this was a real stunner. That once we opened up free trade with China that took tariffs off of these products.
This was the most favored nation, and also joining the WTO.
WTO in 2000, 2001.
2001.
It was stunning when I was working on this China RX thing, which, by the way, took 3 years to figure out because I think a lot of folks don't want us to know about how dependent we are.
It took 3 years of your investigation to
Yes.
kind of get to the bottom of this.
That's exactly right. So when we opened up free trade and China joined WTO, within the next year we lost our last aspirin plant. We lost our ability to make vitamin C. We don't make the ascorbic acid anymore. That's when the last penicillin plant closed in 2004.
Hold on, hang on. In the United States, we don't make aspirin, we don't make vitamin C.
We can't make the core components, the acetylsalicylic acid and the ascorbic. We cannot make it here. And that's because not just opening, quote, free trade, but China cheats. And
China cheats?
And yeah, with our medicines. And cartels. They form these cartels, they dump it on the global market at below market prices, and they drove everybody
So
out.
penicillin, aspirin, vitamin C, all the basics can't do here.
So, right, and so we're here on Capitol Hill, and a lot of people will remember the anthrax attacks. So when the federal government needed to buy doxycycline, like 20 million doses, they asked a European company to make it, but that company had to get the starting material from a plant in China.
Unbelievable.
So this has been known for more than 20 years.
When you say been known, you had to do three years of research, and I noticed that a lot of mainstream media did not get in back of this book. When you went around and did the research, first off, when this stuff happened in 2000, 2001, did anybody bring up the concept that, hey, all of this is going to
Nobody did. Nobody raised any red flags. We let it go. And we're talking about the antibiotics you give your kid who has an ear infection, or if you have pneumonia, or an STD, or urinary tract infection. This is basic stuff that we can no longer make in the United States of America.
And nobody raised, no Republican, nobody on Capitol Hill. As you went and did the book, there was no warning flag that, hey, this is a trend. The pharmaceutical companies were never held accountable for this?
That's right. In fact, I'll tell you something. When this came out, I was working on it. I spoke to someone on Capitol Hill, and I said, hey, I'm working on this. Would you consider having a hearing on it? And this is a high-level person who said, oh, well, we've known about this for years. So there's some people that knew.
And no interest of having a hearing.
And nothing at all. And then, fast forward a couple years later, this person was affected by a contaminated medicine with carcinogens in it. So this hits home to everybody.
I want to go back to the contaminated.
And this, you know what? This even affects members of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's immune. Members of Congress, occupants of the White House. There's a chapter in China RX about, so where does the Secretary of Defense procure his medicine? Our veterans.
They get it all from the same place.
Same
China.
place.
There's we got a couple minutes in this half of the show. There's a strategic element to it, like how do we let that happen? But then there's a health. Talk about, a lot of the stuff that the CCP sends back over here is not exactly to the standards that Americans would anticipate with FDA. Talk to us about the contamination.
Well, hundreds of Americans died in this country about 12 years ago when Chinese companies deliberately, for economic reasons, put this contaminant in heparin. And it was a very, very deceptive and sophisticated operation.
How so?
This contaminant that got in this blood thinner that was used widely in every hospital in this country, you didn't pick it up on the normal tests used at the time when you test these products. This flew under the radar, and it was patented. The chemical was patented by the Chinese government, so they knew. But no one ever considered whether this would be harmful or lethal to the American people, which it was. And the other thing that's insidious about this, how do you know? How do you know that what you're feeling, or if you feel sick, that you trace it back to the drug?
This has a who's who of kind of national security experts that have blurbed the back of this book as saying how outstanding. You got to read it. China RX. If you don't want to stay up at night, read 3 Seconds Until Midnight by Dr. Hatfield and Rosemary Gibson's China RX. But here's the thing. People should know about this. If you get more information, you'll get everything. We got 30 seconds. You'll be here for the second half. But How was this book received? I take it you weren't high-fived by the mainstream media, and were not booked everywhere when this book first came out, correct?
That's right.
And why was that?
Nobody wanted to touch it because of two reasons. Who controls so many aspects of the media? The industry, which gives a lot of money to
Advertising.
media, and the Chinese government, which has done a good job censoring information about China in our media.
You think they actually talked about? You think they actually talked about this a Chinese influence operation to shut this down?
Well, we have a chapter in China RX about the censoring operation in China as it affects things like this.
Okay, we're going to return to War Room Pandemic, episode 15. We got the author, Rosemary Gibson of China RX, going to join Dr. Hatfield, Jack Maxine. We're also very honored to bring on an American Patriot next from Texas, Mike Bowen, the EVP and owner of Protege Ameritech. Next on War Room Pandemic, episode 55, live from our nation's capital. We'll be back in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
This pandemic is a demon. This virus is a demon, and we cannot allow it to hide. It's full-scale war in China as they quarantine 100 million people and have done lockdown on another 300 or 400 million. Never in human history has anything at this scale ever tried to be accomplished. And the Chinese people, a victim of another horrific incident. And the time, later in the week, we're going to have Senator Tom Cotton on here on Friday to talk about his thoughts about this pandemic. He's been very vocal about the responsibility of the Chinese Communist Party to make all information out there about how this started, how long they knew about it, and what's been the whole pattern of this. So we'll get Senator Tom Cotton on his thoughts on the pandemic in China. On War Room Pandemic on Friday, it is Wednesday, 12 February, year of our Lord 2020, episode 15, live on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Broadcast, America's Voice .news, and of course on 96.7 FM in Chicago, the Windy City, the city of broad shoulders, and 103.9 FM. We're now honored to be joined by truly an American patriot and someone who is going to become, I think, quite well known in this entire, if Dr. Gabriel Loon's analysis is correct or the Harvard team is correct, I think that the pandemic potentially may actually come here. Someone that is an American patriot and a made in America guy. He's one of the partners, owners of Prestige Ameritech outside of Dallas, Texas. And he is the manufacturer, the sole last man standing manufacturer of the N95 mask, that mask that you need to help at least somehow protect yourself from these viruses. Joined in studio by Dr. Stephen Hatfield, we got Jack Maxey, who runs the War Room, and of course, Rosemary Gibson, who is the author of the fantastic book, China RX. We now have the line Mike Bowen. Mike, thank you for joining us on War Room Pandemic.
Steve, it's my pleasure, but I do want to make one slight correction. We are not the only manufacturer of N95s. We're the only surgical mask manufacturer still left in the USA, which that's no small thing because the N95 supply rests on the foundation of the surgical mask supply, and if it collapses, then the N95 supply will immediately collapse.
Walk us through that. Walk us through these masks. How effective are they? Why are they important? And why are you one of the last guys doing this in the United States? We got Rosemary here that just stunned us. You know, we're still depressed because we understand none of our medicines are made here anymore. And in normal times, that'd be bad enough. But during a pandemic, when nobody's going to work in China, it could be horrific. Walk us through what the mask is, why it's important, and why it's a building block for other things.
Okay, surgical masks have been around for a long time. They started out literally as cloth squares with ties on them. That's what was worn in the 1918 pandemic, and they weren't effective at all. Surgical masks are made to protect the patient from the doctor. Over the generations, they have become a lot better. They filter very well, but see, they don't fit super tight. And a lot of people wear them incorrectly. So in a situation where the wearer, instead of the patient, needs to be protected, That's where an N95 comes in. N95s are held to a much higher standard. They are regulated by the NIOSH, the National Institute of Safety and Health. They fit better and they filter better. So if you're going to go into a room of a TB patient, you don't want to wear a surgical mask. You want to wear an N95.
Now, tell us about, you have, what capacity of production actually do we have here in the United States total to make this mask, and what percentage do you guys have?
Well, it's the sad state of affairs, Steve, since 2007. Well, let me say in 2006, President Bush, after kind of getting a black eye with Katrina, how the government handled that, put out what was called Presidential Directive 21. This directive, Bush Presidential Directive 21, it asked HHS, Health and Human Services, to go over America's pandemic plans. And HHS found out 1 year after we did that America's mask makers had left the country. I am sitting talking to you in a 220,000 square foot building, 5 acres under roof. It was owned by a company called Technol, T-E-C-N-O-L, back in the 90s. In 1997, Kimberly-Clark bought this company. And a few years later, they sent thousands of jobs out of the country, and they put the U.S. mask supply under foreign control. Now, the sad thing about it is within that same year, so did everyone else. In 2005, a group of displaced workers, I was the director of new product development at Technol, my business partner and CEO of this company, and friend and hero, Dan Reese, was over engineering and product development and manufacturing. So we said, whoa, all of the mask makers have left the country. This is a national security issue. And very altruistically and very naively, we thought, okay, hey, if we bring this up, this is obvious to us. It's a national security issue. Let's start a company and bring it up. And nobody got it. And then nobody listened. The whole mask market was only interested in price. Now, stop me if I'm going on too much.
No, you're fantastic. Keep rolling.
Okay, well, here's what happened. Okay, so fast forward to 2009. 2007. HHS sent representatives to the mask companies. And what's funny is they called us and scared the crap out of my partner. Secretary said, Health and Human Services is on the line. And he thought, uh-oh, what did we do? Well, they were calling, and here's how it went. Brenda Hayden called. She's no longer with HHS, but Brenda Hayden says, do you make masks? And Dan says, yeah, we do. And she says, no, I mean, do you make masks? And he said, yes, we make masks. And she said, no, do you physically get material in and manufacture masks? The reason she was so incredulous is because nobody else did. Everybody else she called said, hey, we make them in China, or we get them from China, or we make them in Mexico. Okay, so we thought, hey, this is all over. Hey, we've waited a year. We've talked about this story, and now the government's figured it out. So, Steve, then what happened is they came down, and we're meeting, and we're so happy because the government has discovered what we have discovered, this national security issue. And we're in the middle of this discussion, and we're telling them what we can do, and we can build machines, and we can ramp up, and we can help you save the mask supply. And they go, whoa. And they said, Brenda goes, wait, I'm sorry. We only have authority to study the problem. I said, wait a minute. So you're not here to fix it, you're just here to study it? And they said, yeah. Okay, let's fast forward. That was 2007. So in 2009, my business partner and I go to lunch. We're driving back to the factory, and my cell phone rings, and it's 202. And I always answer the phone when it's 202, Washington. And she said, hi, this is Brenda Hayden with the HHS. And I said, yeah, how are you? And she said, we have a situation. And I said, you mean like pandemic? And she said, yeah, this was a few days before it was generally known. And I said, Brenda, I told you this was going to happen. And she said, yeah, I know. Anyway, what can you do? Okay, so, Steve, since then, that's all we get. What can you do?
That was 10. That's 12 years ago.
That was 2007. So HHS, and they gave us a presentation which I sent to you guys.
Yeah.
HHS since 2007 has thought of this as a national security problem. And Google my name, Google Prestige Ameritech. I've been everywhere for 14 years trying to get people to listen. I've talked to congressmen. I've talked to generals. I've written to President. President Obama wrote President Obama 4 or 5 or 6 letters, and he sent me a presidential proclamation on pandemics suitable for framing.
Mike, this is Jack Maxey.
No, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I just have a real
Jack.
question because it just struck me so
Yeah.
hard. I listened to one of your other interviews that you and I had spoken about. What percentage of these masks did your plant actually produce when they were at the top of their game in the 90s?
87%. This factory, it was an American success story. Technol was just a bunch of guys that got together and started a company. And within a few years, they had surpassed 3M and Johnson & Johnson and owned 87% of the masks, the surgical masks. And they were, during AIDS, they invented right before AIDS, they invented the first fluid shield mask, so that really put them on the map. And if you see an orange mask out there, that was copyrighted by Technol back then. And then Kimberly-Clark bought the company. Kimberly-Clark got into business by buying Technol. And then most recently, Kimberly-Clark spun off that business into Halyard. And then Halyard is now owned by Owens & Minor. Can I say one thing here that really gets in my craw? Okay. I've been preaching this American-made story since 2007.
Yep.
Halyard marks its boxes. Product of USA further processed in Mexico. Some clever attorney figured out a way to make that. That's legal, by the way. I've complained to FTC. That is legal.
Product of USA, but not made in the USA.
What's the quality of these?
It says product of USA further processed in Mexico. So an average person would go, hey, this thing's made in the USA, and maybe they must do something minor in Mexico. Maybe they package it. No, here's the deal. They send fabric, rolls of fabric, to Mexico, and it's fully made into a mask in Mexico. Yet, one of my distributors even one day said, hey, Mike, how come you can't make masks as cheaply as Halyard can, or Kimberly-Clark back then? I said, well, I make masks. I make my masks here. I pay people wages. I don't have those low wages. And he said, well, Kimberly-Clark does. And I said, no, they don't. He said, no, it says, and this is somebody who owns a big percentage of the mask supply. He says to me, it says right here on the box, product of USA, product of USA made further processed in Mexico.
So what is our status?
Even an expert,
Okay, so Mike, what is our status today? Today, there's a potential. There's a pandemic in China. Okay. It's going throughout the world. You're clearly now everybody is looking around saying, how do I get my hands on an N95 mask, right? Surgical mask. What is your status of the factory today?
The status of the market is there's 200 times more demand than there is supply. My phone is ringing I have it on Do Not Disturb. My phone is ringing every 2 minutes. Every 1 minute, I'm getting an email. I had to change my email address so that I could actually see emails from my customers. We probably make 7% maybe of the mask supply. The rest of it is made in China. Well, the rest, okay, you split it up. We make 7, and then the rest of it, half of it's in Mexico and half of it's in China. But the part that's in Mexico has got reservations and plane tickets to go to China. China has been steadily taking away our mask business. In a few years, it'll all be owned by China. If you go to the NIOSH website, National Institute of Safety and Health, they have a page that shows all N95 respirators, all approved N95 respirators. I want you to look at the number of Chinese respirators. And they sell these things for whatever they want.
Didn't China just
sell a mask for less than I can buy the material?
Didn't China just mandate? I think it was 3M that all production now of the mask has to stay in China so that they can serve their domestic market.
I read that in the Wall Street Journal, and I've heard from several other sources that China is telling their mask factories not to ship masks out. That they actually have Chinese officials in 3M factory. That's according to the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago. So now I can say this, though. Most of the people I make masks for, I'm just a minor player. Most of the people I make masks for import masks from China. None of them has called and said, my China supply is getting cut off, but I can tell you what, they're all really nervous.
Okay, but we only got a few minutes left. Mike, I want to make the case here for you is that at 7% of the total market, could you fulfill all the mass requests that people going to Amazon or people that need today, if we had no Chinese access, for whatever reason the Chinese needed for the domestic market, how do you meet U.S. demand?
Not now. Too little, too late. Now, we build machines. You know, this factory once made most of the mass supply. It could again. But again, what I've been saying since 2007 is, guys, I'm warning you, here's what's going to happen. Let's prepare, because if you call me after it starts, I can't help everybody. I help the people who were smart enough to listen. MD Anderson Cancer Center and Texas Health Resources. Texas Health Resources is the Texas hospital that had the Ebola outbreak, had the Ebola patient. They're believers. Cook Children's Hospital in Fort Worth, but you know what? Those are the only 3 hospitals, major systems I've been able to get.
Mike, we got to jump. We're going to have you back on the show hopefully early next week. But right now, what do you need either the government to do or private industry, capital? I mean, for you to potentially ramp up and meet demand here in the United States, assuming we have no access to Chinese masks, at least at some point in time. We want to make these domestically. How do you do that? How do people get in back of making these in America?
Well, the CDC needs to get involved, and they need to tell America's hospitals what they've been telling me for the last so many years, that this is a national security problem and they should buy American masks, because they don't believe me. I'm a mask salesman. And the DOD and the VA should stop letting our warfighters and retired warfighters rely on a mask supply that's controlled by a foreign government. But again, Steve, I can't help everybody right now. We're going to help as many hospitals as we can, and then after this thing, we can build machines and help. But it takes months to build a mask machine. We kind of have what we have now. Could we ramp up? Yes, we could. I'm glad you brought that up, because here's why I'm not going to do that right now. I'm out here on my own, and we did that last time, Steve. Listen to this. We hired 150 people. We bought this factory. We built new machines. Everybody said they'd stay with us. The day after the pandemic, they forgot who we were. We nearly went out of business. I had to sell 5% of the company to survive in 2011. So I can't do that. I can't put our company in our. I can't. I can't fire 100 people again.
Can I ask a question about the quality of these masks coming from China, or when they did come? And the reason for asking is there was a recall of 9 million supposedly sterile surgical gowns for American hospitals that were made by a rogue manufacturer in China, and they were contaminated with something, who knows what. And also surgical packs with the things that surgeons used during surgery. Does anybody test? Are any hospitals testing what they're getting? They're assuming that it's the same thing, but are they any good?
America's hospitals want to save money. And I'm glad you brought this up. The way America's hospitals buy products, you don't just go start a medical company and try to sell products anymore. It's all rigged. It's GPO, stands for Group Purchasing Organization. They bid these things out. They're looking for the low price. That's China. That's why all this is happening.
And the same has happened with our medicines.
Yeah,
same thing happened.
I can't remember this book tells you why. I don't remember the author, but it's a book called Poorly Made in China. Yep. It gets right into the whole Chinese manufacturing psyche, and it's all about appearances. It's not about reality. Poorly Made in China, I highly recommend it. It'll open your eyes.
Mike, we've got to jump. But how do people get? Do you have a website? Do you have a Twitter handle? How do people? I know your email. We're not going to give that out because you're already blown up. How can people? Because certainly nobody. We want this to be robust and vibrant. That you never have to lay off the 150 people again. It's heart rendering.
Yeah.
Well, how do people get access to you?
Well, I don't need any more access. We're getting bombed. Our company is called Prestige Ameritech, and it's prestigeameritech.com. I'm Mike Bowen, the vice president. And again, I'd like to say something again. My business partner, Dan Reese, the smartest guy I know, he started this company in 2005. asked me to join him in 2006, and together we discovered this national security issue. This guy is the masked man. He's the hero that is going to, after this is over, he's going to build all the mask machines that are going to protect America. Dan Reese.
Well, I got to tell you, you and Dan Reese are two American heroes, true patriots, and we appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate you. I know you guys are now nonstop, but we're going to continue on this story, and would love to have, if you're ever in D.C., want to have you and Dan in the war room, but definitely have you guys on the next couple of weeks to give us updates on this. I know people are very focused on this story, and particularly this is the heart of what it means to be made in America. So, Mike, thank you very much.
Nobody has listened to us like you and your team.
Well, thank you. That's what we're in business for, is to make sure that we, America made's for a reason, not just about price. The China price has a true cost to it. Mike, thank you very much for joining us. I said this is the China price, and this is the problem, is that these people know the price of everything and they know the value of nothing, and that is why we're in this jam. Rosemary, I want to wrap up. We're going to have you back on next week, but about your book, China RX, everybody ought to get it. It's on Amazon. What are the solutions today? You've outlined a problem. Mike's outlined a problem. He's getting a production line up, getting tons of orders. What is the solution for our medicines? We don't make penicillin. We don't make aspirin. We can't make vitamin C. What are people supposed to do?
Well, Mike says it's going to take a couple months to get the machines, built and running. For medicines, it's a little bit more complex, but I think within a year there could be some start production of some of the essential medicines that we need to take care of people if there's a coronavirus real big outbreak here in the United States. Again, this is to treat people who have it, not to prevent it with a vaccine. So we got to get going.
But you're saying something deeper in this. The pandemic and the coronavirus is the issue that faces us today, and that's what's brought yours to the forefront.
Right.
But you're saying, just like Mike, this is a national security issue. If we're going to have a secured nation,
absolutely,
it's more than just tanks and missiles and soldiers. There's health security.
I'll tell you, medicines can be used as a strategic weapon, and China doesn't have to hack the electric grid or fire a missile to take America down. They could do it very quietly and cause the amount of social chaos that we've never seen before in this country. And someday, irrespective of what China does or doesn't do, it's going to hit the fan. There's going to be another version of coronavirus happening in this country. And unless we build our capacity to make the essential things for survival, this is survival. This isn't about quality of life. This is basic survival. So we've got to get work on it real quick.
The book is China RX. You can get it on Amazon. It's by Rosemary Gibson, exposing the risk of America's dependence on China for medicine. It is absolutely a shocker, but the great thing about a crisis like this, it brings up, Dr. Hatfield, many, many issues, whether it's masks, whether it's medicine, infrastructure. We're now paying the true cost. We're going to pay the true cost of the China price, right? With this just-in-time inventory,
Absolutely.
this globalization. It wasn't just about taking jobs, which is bad enough. It just wasn't about stripping our factories out of here. It's left us exposed as a nation. There were now supplicants to our enemies.
Yes.
That is unacceptable. And I know that's one of the reasons that Donald J. Trump is President of the United States. Okay, Stephen K. Bannon, episode 15. If you're going to have a tough time sleeping after this, is the whole purpose of it. I mean, this is why we've got Dr. Hatfield here, 3 seconds till midnight, Rosemary Gibson on China RX, Jack Maxey running the engine room of War Room Pandemic. We're going to be here back tomorrow, and on Friday we're going to have Senator Tom Cotton in the War Room to discuss all this. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m.